meeting of the Parks and Rec Board, and if we could start by standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty, justice for all. Okay. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from our September meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Minutes approved. Tammy, announcements.
Announcements. Board of Commissioners meetings for upcoming meetings Monday are going to be Monday, October 24th and Monday, November 14th here at the Radnor Township Building at 7 o'clock p.m. The next Parks and Recreation Board meeting will be held on Thursday, November 10th at 6:30 p.m. as of right now at the Radnor Township Building. The Recreation Department's fall activities brochure is online and now available. That would be the 2011 fall activities brochure at www.radnor.com. The Radnor Township newsletter, the Winter Newsletter 2011, will be available and mailed to the homes in late November. Radnor Youth Basketball registration is up and running for boys and girls and going into grades 1 to 12. The Ithan Valley Park project cleanup will take place on Sunday, October 16th from 12 o'clock to 3 o'clock p.m. The 9th annual Sarah McCarran cleanup will take place at Skunk Hollow Park on Sunday, October 16th from 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock p.m. The Delaware Valley Orienteering Association event will take place on Saturday, October 22nd at the Willows. Please meet in the exit parking lot at the Willows. The electronics recycling event will be held on Saturday, October 22nd from 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock p.m. at the Willows, and the yard waste collection event will be held on Saturday, October 22nd from 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock p.m. at Skunk Hollow Park. The Radnor Township Building Safe Halloween Trick-or-Treat event will be held on Friday, October 28th at the Radnor Township Building from 8 a.m. to 4 o'clock p.m. The 34th annual Penn Medicine Radnor Run will take place on Sunday, October 30th, starting and finishing at the Radnor Township Building at 8:30 a.m. Pre-registration and sponsorship reception will be held at the Radnor Hotel Friday, October 28th from 5:30 to 7 o'clock p.m. The foul shooting contest and food drive, which is basketball free throw shooting, and a kickoff event for the Radnor Youth Basketball Program will be held on Saturday, November 19th at Radnor Activity Center at Sulpizio Gymnasium. For a listing of all of our department's activities and township information, please visit the website at www.radnor.com.
Okay, thank you. Anybody have any questions on Tammy's announcements? As I see, we have some guests in the audience. Do you want to go to presentation from Alex? Why don't you come on up to the podium and.
I am Alex Handon, and I'm here to earn a requirement for citizenship in the community, which is a merit badge for Boy Scouts.
Okay. And what's entailed with what you have to do to earn that?
I need to write about the discussion of tonight's meeting,
Okay.
the different opinions of everybody here, and whether I agree or disagree with the topic.
All agree. I'm just teasing. Great. Well, thank you for coming, and good luck with your project.
Thank
If
you.
you have any questions, let us know.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. John, are you here to make a presentation, or?
I'm not sure this microphone is on. Okay. Good evening. I'm John Fisher. I think I know most of you folks, and I'm here to throw out an idea tonight that I'd like you to consider. I think I'm coming back in November to talk about Birdtown and maybe to talk about this idea I'm going to discuss tonight in a little greater detail. As some of you may know, I've been working on a project to consider the feasibility of constructing a multi-use trail within the Route 100 trolley corridor that would connect Valley Forge Park with John Hines Refuge. A portion of this trail obviously would go through two different townships, connecting the western end of the existing Radnor Trail with the Chester Valley Trail, which is in planning and under construction right now. And in dealing with the Tredyffrin Township portion, we have been working with Tredyffrin Township's Sidewalks, Trails, and Paths Committee. In working with this committee, I've got a little idea as to what this committee does, and it seems to me that they're dealing with some very important issues and that we should consider in Radnor Township whether we should have a similar committee. This committee deals with trails, sidewalks, and paths in a holistic approach to dealing with pedestrian transportation in the township as a global issue. I think some of the goals that this committee might work on are developing a comprehensive pedestrian network throughout the township. Tredyffrin Township has developed some very good maps of where potential trails and sidewalks might be constructed. The committee might also research funding opportunities for how to pay for new trails and new sidewalks. The committee might review the existing township ordinances dealing with trails and sidewalks and making recommendations about changes. The committee would work on extending the Radnor Trail so that we have an existing trail that goes through most of the township. And finally, the committee might work on making the town centers such as Wayne and Garrett Hill and Bryn Mawr more pedestrian accessible. Those are just some of the projects that a committee like this might work on. I started kicking this idea around with John and Elaine, who are here, and also with the Friends of Radnor Trails to see whether people thought this was a worthwhile project. And I think by and large people thought this was something that was worth considering. Then the question arose as to how would you structure a committee to deal with this issue? Would it be a standalone committee like Park and Rec or EAC, Planning Commission, or would it be easier to use an existing committee to at least get the ball rolling? And I think the consensus of everybody who's thought about it is that it would be easier to use an existing committee to get the process started, and the most logical committee to use would be the Park and Rec Trails Subcommittee. So I have two questions for you to consider, and I don't expect you to give me answers tonight because this is all new to you, but this would be a major undertaking, particularly in the beginning, and it would greatly expand what the Trails Subcommittee is doing now. But the two questions that I'd like you to consider is, one, do you think this is a worthwhile project? And two, if you do think it's a worthwhile project, would the Park and Rec Trails Subcommittee be willing to take this on and really to morph into a larger committee with a more global approach to pedestrian issues? Now, I understand, I appreciate that trails are recreational, sidewalks are not so recreational, so it's really not an entirely neat fit. But again, it is probably the most logical committee of any that exists in the township now to really undertake this project. I would expect, though, because this is a larger undertaking, that there would be more community involvement on the committee, and it would take some of the burden off of you guys, because I know you've got a lot on your plate right now, and you're probably thinking, you know, the last thing we need to do is really undertake something else that's really going to be a major involvement over the next couple of years. So I think that we could help you with that by really having maybe some Park and Rec members, somebody from the board would obviously have to be on the committee and probably would have to chair it, but having more community representation, particularly dealing with the sidewalk and path issues, which I said are really not recreational issues to begin with. So if you don't mind considering these two issues, and we can talk about it in greater detail next month. But in the meantime, I see a couple of red lights have gone on, so if there's some questions, fire away, or comments.
John, I've got one. We've kicked around the idea, and we've talked about sidewalks for a long time, and you know, pro and con. Since it's been bouncing around Tredyffrin for a while now, what kind of feedback are they getting from the community?
You haven't been reading the Suburban, have you?
I have been. I just wanted to hear it from you.
It's a controversial issue. They passed an ordinance, an amendment to their subdivision plan, which you know, mandates sidewalks in certain types of developments. And I think it was approved on a 5-2 vote in the final plan It was approved 4-3. I'm not sure why somebody switched their vote, but it's a controversial issue, and I'm not suggesting that we will now tell Tom Quirk he's got to put a sidewalk in his front yard. I'm not. I don't think the committee would be undertaking that, but I think the committee would be. Tradifferent has actually done several sidewalk projects that I think are very worthwhile. There's one on Upper Gulf Road now that takes you a good way to the middle school and the high school, and one from Dalesford to the high school. So I think that's what you want to look at. You want to look at projects that are going to connect people to your public institutions, such as your schools and the library and things of, of that nature. But yes, it is a controversial issue. Not everybody's in favor of sidewalks. But it's an issue, and at this stage, is this a worthwhile project to consider? The commissioners haven't weighed in, Bob Zinkowski hasn't weighed in, so we're very much in the preliminary stage at this point.
Okay.
If we were to move forward, just funding for it. I mean, is it mostly grants? Is it taxpayer money? Is it?
Oh, no, it would be mostly grant money, and there's not, to be honest with you, there's not a lot of it out there right now. But I think that before, we've set up such a committee, it would probably be a couple of years before we really could get any meaningful projects underway. Tradifferent, they use some stimulus money to do some of their projects. Well, there's no stimulus money these days.
Right.
But there are grants, Safe Routes to School. Brucey, isn't that a project? I mean, that's one thing that you could look at. If you're connecting to schools, I think there is funding available. But it would be grant money. We're not talking at this point about taxpayer money.
Right. Okay.
I think it's an excellent idea, and it's been shown that communities that have sidewalks are thriving communities more so than others, and there are areas in our township where I think sidewalks are needed. For one, in St. David's, I know that's been a controversy, but going from the station to Eastern College would be one example that I would give. But of course, I'm sure that the committee would do a lot of research to determine where the sidewalks are needed, and Tom Quirk's neighborhood would not be one of them, I wouldn't think.
Oh, I would hope so.
No, you would.
As long as it's for free.
Yeah,
to connect,
there are obvious roads where you consider Conestoga Road. You might look at Conestoga Road because it's an arterial road, but if you live on a cul-de-sac someplace, there's no need to put in
Exactly.
sidewalks. So,
Yeah, and as far as your birding project, yes, I would think that is something that we should absolutely say yes to. I'm all for that.
Okay, nice quick answer.
John,
But I'm not going to ask the rest of you to go.
I represent the Parks and Rec on the subcommittee of the Open Space Committee, and I think it's a very worthwhile activity. In fact, I live on Conestoga Road, and I would not be adverse to having sidewalks in front of my home, to be quite honest with you. But I think it is worthwhile. It's not. I think it's putting a long-term plan together. That's what I see, and you're not mandating that one must have it, but at least being proactive, and I fully support that. Is open space, the committee, the subcommittee, as they look forward to putting this new open space plan together, aware of this? And I think there seems to be a tie-in with them also.
Well, that's what we're struggling with, whether it should be part of the Park and Rec Trails Subcommittee, whether it should be open space. It's really not open space. I mean, I can make an argument that it should be a standalone committee because it doesn't really fit neatly with any other committee, but, we all understand that setting up a new standalone committee is not easy. So it would probably be easier to use an existing subcommittee as an umbrella organization. Open space would be a possibility, but we just thought that the Trails Subcommittee is already dealing with trails, so it's already a third of the way there. It would be a more logical vehicle.
Speaking for myself, I'd be very interested in supporting that effort.
Good. Well, the
Could I
bookends
offer a
are in
little
support.
background? I wanted to offer a little background. First of all, the Park and Recreation Open Space Plan that was developed in the late 80s did include trail networks to connect all the parks as a proposal. Also, as one of the distractions when we were working on the Radnor Trail project, the township staff was directed to put together a map of a street trail system. That was done forever ago. I mean, Jay McCrone was director of Parks and Rec at the time. So you may be able to find that in your office, Tammy. But that stuff would feed right into this project.
Good.
Let me just add that we're talking about, tonight we've talked a little bit about sidewalks and trails, but really this is more than just sidewalks and trails. I mean, it's really a comprehensive pedestrian transportation network. So it could even include lanes on our streets. So I'm just bringing this up because while you're thinking this through, is Parks and Rec subcommittee the right place for this? It will involve our parks, our streets, it's very encompassing. So, I mean, I think what John's here asking, and that as a commissioner I would love to hear before this comes to the commissioners, is do you think, the Parks and Rec Board, do you think that your subcommittee, the Trail Subcommittee, is the right vehicle for this work? I mean, we have this group of really engaged and enthusiastic and capable volunteers who are motivated to start working on this in earnest. And we're trying to figure out what's the best venue for them. So when you're thinking through this in the next couple of weeks, think through broadly. It's sidewalks, it's trails, it's streets, it's anywhere you could ride a bike or be on foot, and everything that involves. And think through, what's the best place for it.
I tend to agree with Elaine. I don't know if it should be part of this board. When you talk about trails and everything, obviously yes, but when you're talking about sidewalks and you're talking about roadways and stuff like that, it almost, to say, cheapens the concept by coming from this board, but it's probably a little bit more intense than it should come from this board. We're Park and Recreation, and I think we're talking about here transportation within the township. I think it's a different level. I think it's a different area,
Okay.
and pretty much a standalone or belongs to a different department.
Well, what about
And I
Birdtown?
firmly support this, by the way.
Good.
Where does Birdtown fit in here, though?
It doesn't.
The Birdtown's,
Okay.
I'm just going to be
different
here.
topic. Different
We're going
topic.
to talk about Birdtown tonight,
really
except
like
you have too
Birdtown.
much on your agenda, so we're going to talk
Different
about
topic.
Birdtown.
It's a different
next-
topic.
That's going to be my reason for being here next in the November meeting.
Well, perhaps what we may want to do is have the subcommittee meet and
Have
meet
you
with
come,
those
yeah.
individuals that Elaine referenced, dialogue on that, see if it fits, and then come back to the board as a whole with a kind of observation of what our thoughts are, and then decide from there.
Probably a good idea.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, John.
Alex, good idea or not? All right, good.
Thumbs up from now, Alex. Okay, why don't we switch to activities report, Tammy?
Our activities report for September. September found our department very busy planning for the fall, inclusive of a partnership event with the Wayne Senior Center and the staff over there for an inaugural event, Active Aging Week celebration, which took place on Saturday, October 1st. Over 50 people were in attendance in the first year here of the event, and our department has been gathering information and detail for what it learned just to help to build on the success of that event, which we hope to do again in 2012. The Active Aging Week celebration event also kicked off the Township Manager's Health and Wellness Challenge, where Township Manager Bob Zinkowski made a commitment to donate $10 for every pound he loses from now through November 22nd to the Wayne Senior Center's wellness program. And he has a goal of 30 pounds to lose. He's challenging members of the community to participate in his effort to improve their overall health. We encourage, as a department, everybody in the community to take part in this program by making a commitment to their own health, perhaps a change of lifestyle, such as eating healthy, quitting smoking, improving their water intake, and exercising, and then to find their own benefit or charity that they could contribute to. And then we encourage folks to share their story with us so that we can all take steps towards a healthier and more energized Radnor community. The Fall 2011 Recreation Program Guide has over 25 activities available for the community. and an array of activities consisting of preschool events, preschool programs, teen programs, park cleanups, special events such as the orienteering event coming up, and the Safe Trick or Treat here at the Township building. We also have a New York City trip that'll be planned for December on the 3rd. After-school science and chess programs are also taking place and are offered in partnership with the Ithan Elementary School PTO. Winter and spring 2012 programs and events are also being planned, and the winter and spring 2012 recreation program guide will be available in mid-December with information and updates available at the website as we put those together. Registration for the 2011-2012 Radnor Youth Basketball Program has begun, and we are very busy planning the components of the program, working with the public and private schools to develop facility usage schedules and game times. We're having coaches meetings. We're also coordinating with the age group directors and league administrators. We're promoting the program, preparing the specifications for the apparel order that's purchased for the program. And new this year, we've actually started the development of sponsorship opportunities for the apparel and other components of the program. So area businesses can definitely take part in that. The date has been set for our annual holiday event, Holiday at the Willows. It'll take place on Sunday, December 11th from 2 to 4 p.m. And we're working with the Girl Scouts to offer holiday-related ornament and craft making for the children who attend, along with providing interactive entertainment, music, face painting, balloon sculpting, and of course Santa Claus. Our department has received a sponsorship from TD Bank in the amount of $1,500 for the event, so a special thank you goes to TD Bank. In September, we continue to work to fill the role of our department's vacant position, Recreation Program Coordinator, in trying to evolve our department further through the reorganization project to put our department into its new identity as the Department of Community Recreation and Programming. And on October 3rd, we welcomed the hiring of Tiffany Heilman to our department. She's from Central Pennsylvania, and she was a program coordinator for Greater Elizabethtown Area Recreation and Services, located in Lancaster County. And she brings a fresh look to our area, and I'm confident that she's going to be able to contribute a number of significant things as we start to develop programming further and events in the coming months. In addition to programming that's been taking place at the Radnor Activity Center, we also coordinated 2 rentals for September that included activities such as birthday parties and basketball parties. The Willows Mansion hosted 5 events in September, and 5 events are scheduled for October. The facility continues to be rented and utilized in 2011 for functions, along with hosting many department programs and camps. Many residents have been enjoying the evening tennis play at Radnor High School under the lights from 8 o'clock to 10:45 p.m., of course, with us adjusting the time now, moving that back a lot earlier, commensurate with it getting dark, and that's on Wednesdays and Thursdays. The Public Works Department's adjusting the lights every week, and the lights will remain on as of right now through the end of October, and we'll evaluate that again and perhaps extend that on into November. Outdoor field scheduling is taking place currently with our department, and we're coordinating with the school district and other private schools and organizations within the community to accommodate the busy fall sports seasons. We also had the Fields Committee had met again, and we'll update on that in a moment. The Cowan Park Comfort Station project per the DCNR grant, we did receive official notification that that extension has been lengthened until June 30th, 2012. So we'll begin working on that project a lot more closely soon, and of course on into spring. The Friends of Ithan Valley Park group has been established in an effort with their project that has been ongoing over there at the park, and they do have an event scheduled for Saturday, October 16th from 12 to 3 p.m., and they welcome members of the community to come over and join them. Entrance and parking at the intersection of South Wayne Avenue and Roberts Road is where they are to use, and the work will include weed trimming, vine cutting, and fallen branch removal. The 9th annual Sarah McCarran Trail Cleanup at Skunk Hollow Park will be held on Sunday, October 16th from 1 to 4. This event welcomes family and friends and teachers and classmates and fellow environmentalists to help spruce up the Skunk Hollow Trail. by picking up litter, clear fallen limbs and branches, and prune overgrown vegetation, rake and groom the trail path, and definitely reestablish the trailblazes. A special thank you goes to members of the St. Martin's Church in Radnor who took part in a litter pickup and trail walk on Saturday, October 1st. The group hopes to establish this as an annual event in Radnor due to their passion for the beautiful Radnor Trail. For more information and updates, please go to the website at www.radnor.com and also check out weekly reports that are updated there each week. In your packets, we've also provided a copy of some of our updated flyers and program brochures, so please feel free to take a look at those. There's also a copy of the entire administration of Radnor Township's goals and objectives that have been presented to the Board of Commissioners, so please take a look at those and let me know if you have any questions. Thank you. That concludes my report for September.
Okay, thank you. Anybody have any questions for Tammy?
Tammy, I think you gave the wrong location for the parking for 8th and Valley. You said South Wayne. I think you meant South Roberts. South Eighth and South Roberts.
Mm-hmm.
How's the registration for the Radnor Run coming?
Right now, as of our last committee meeting a week ago, we were right on pace, somewhere in the 200s, which is where we were at this time last year. So it is looking like we're on a very similar pace towards success that we had last year.
Great. And you typically have a run kind of towards the tail end of the deadline for registration.
We do.
Yeah,
We do.
okay,
We
great.
usually have a rush.
Super. Okay. Any, how about Shade Tree? Do you have a?
Yes, I represented the Parks and Rec at the September 28th
Great.
meeting. There's a copy of the agenda for your review. And quickly, if you look down, the first three items received conditional approval, and number 4 was tabled. If you need any other details to fill that out, just see me, or the minutes, I think, are posted on the Township website for your involvement, okay? So it was a
Okay.
pleasure representing the Parks and Rec at the September 28th meeting. So,
Super.
okay?
Okay, thanks, Pat.
Yep.
School Board, Brucey?
Thank you. The students are back to their routine in school, and we on the school board will be discussing the upcoming budget very shortly, within the next month or so. This year's budget is due 2 weeks earlier than it has been in the past several years due to the presidential election. So we'll be working hard, our administrators will be working hard, and the public is welcome to join us. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Committee reports?
We have a fields report.
Yep.
We met and talked about utilization of the fields, and utilization rates are considerably high. We also began to talk about the process of developing a prioritization of usage because demand is really outgrowing availability. So we began to put some parameters around that. We're going to continue to meet and hope to come back to the board, the full board, within the next 2 months with a couple of ideas about how to move on that.
Okay. Commissioners report. Elaine, John?
2 things I mentioned to you last month, and we approved the budget update that includes $400,000 in capital for various park and recreation projects. And this past week we approved, or this week we approved the money for the sprinkler system at Kreutzberg. So progress is being made. And the other thing is, I'm sure you all know by now, but we sent a letter to the school district giving them notice of termination of the fields maintenance agreement. That was done because that contract includes a 90-day notice provision. Our goal, of course, is to continue that contract in an equitable fashion, and we await response from the school district.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Anybody have any questions for John? Has there been any direction on how the monies for the facilities is going to be generated or is going to be directed in terms of the facilities?
Yeah, the projects we're looking at are, there's money for both Sulpizio and the Willows Mansion, monies for painting the exterior Willows Cottage, and then I think there's money for the library too? No? Wayne Senior? Or is that it? They're the ones that are popping in my head right now. And this is money that we had from a previous bond
Right.
that, as Bill White's been working through the details of the finances, we put it in the right pile, so.
What direction is being taken towards the violation reports from the zoning or the issues that we've had ongoing since probably at least April with regards to Sulpizio?
Well, we continue to try to figure out the best way to approach it. Obviously, one of the issues is the fact that it's, the school district owns the property. So we have to figure out what work can we do that makes sense. There's some of the work on that list that until you do something with the roof, it makes no sense to do that work. And Tammy can fill us in whether, or Steve, on whether anything's moving.
We are doing some of the smaller work at the gym right now. I guess you're all familiar with the, for lack of a better term, the closet with the tunnel. We're going to try to do this in-house. We're going to install a sump pump and a dehumidifier to get that room dried out. And we're obtaining quotes for a professional cleaning of that area, as well as investigating running the HVAC, perhaps with just outside air or on fan, if you will, a few hours a day just to circulate air. And we're also getting a price for duct cleaning of the ducts that you can see when you look up. So that's what we're concentrating on now. We're trying to do that in-house. We have skilled people that can do that stuff, not the duct cleaning, but we're going to try to take care of what we can on that end. We know that's been a problem area for some time. So
Are these are new issues, Steve, or are these stemming back from the inspections that were done back in December, January?
When I read that report, and I'm probably not calling it the correct room.
It was the underground tunnel
Yeah.
area where it used to connect to the
That was
middle
called
school.
out in that report, and that's what we're working on right now, trying to get that cleaned up, if you will. The HVAC and the duct cleaning is just something, when I was there, I thought would be a good idea to try to investigate. I don't know the last time that was done, so we'll look at that also.
Okay, anybody have any thoughts or comments? Okay. It just seems that we're spinning our wheels on this facility, and, you know, this inspection was done in January, and we don't seem to be making any headway, and I just, you know, it keeps coming back in our lap, and, you know, we keep asking for a response and asking for action items, and nothing seems to be, it seems like we're sitting still in the same spot, and I just wonder where we're going with this. John, Elaine, anything?
Some of I don't know the exact amount, but some of that $400,000 that we approved is for repairs at Sulpizio.
Okay.
Now, I haven't seen the list of exactly what repairs are and what dollar amount.
But we've had the inspection since December.
Right, so I would imagine the top priority items that we can afford will be on that list from that $400,000 that we just approved. And, I mean, we can get...
This board made a motion to give 90 days to get some action items done with the violations that were done on that list, and nothing's been done, and it's now 150, 180 days. And we're still utilizing, and we're still saying, well, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, but nothing's getting done.
Well, authorizing the funding is a big first step. And so, and that has happened.
But we're letting our township residents go into that building with issues that are in violation of our codes.
And
now we've got what, the HVAC issues?
Well, that I think the issues that are being addressed in that tunnel are issues that were in the report that were priority items.
Okay.
So that, I mean, and I don't think that's a big capital expense for us. And I honestly don't know what the list of things out of that amount of funding that's going to happen. And I think maybe by the next meeting, we should have a checklist of exactly what the funding is and what it's going towards.
That was
But
my
the-
suggestion. If you
The
look at-
goal is to address those priority items that
look-
bring it up to code for our residents.
We were handed June 6th, I think, cost estimate for repairs.
Yep.
Sulpizio, and it line item. Would it be helpful if they took that and just indicated on that particular form, just whether it's scheduled or it's still in long-term?
Right.
I think that would address what Fenton is asking for.
I mean,
Right.
Well, the idea is to meet, perhaps for Steve to meet with community development at the direction of the manager and start to look at that list and evaluate, first of all, understand how much money could potentially be available for this facility, and then identify, what those priority items are on that list and try and see if we could come up with a plan of what could be achieved. I know the items that Steve had spoken about would come directly out of the current operating budget.
Right.
So those actually wouldn't come from the capital expense that John was speaking about. Those would come right out of our current operating line items.
I mean, I think it's great that we've allocated funds to address some of the issues, but it just seems like we're spinning wheels, and we're only talking about Sulpizio. I mean, we've got Willows, we've got Kreuzberg. I mean,
Did say, John, that you are going to install, or did you say this, Elaine, sprinklers in
We approved-
Kreuzberg.
Yeah, and we,
Yeah, and then there's some flooring issues there too, aren't there?
Tammy, did they sign, I know we sent them an MOU. The mainline school night, the township has entered into a memorandum of understanding with them that we'll pay for the fire protection, and they're going to assume the rest of the repairs, and they're developing a phase schedule so that they'll do the first floor first, because that's where they do most of their operations, and then they'll expand from there over a period of years. And we will continue to inspect to assure that they stay with that schedule. So as far as I'm concerned, the Kreuzberg's done except for monitoring to assure that the work gets done. The Willows, we've had some meetings with external agencies that are interested in possibly taking over responsibility for that. So how that works out will determine what we do there. The cottage needs the paint job. We're going to do that. And I share your frustrations about Sulpizio. You know that.
yeah, I was just going to say, John, Elaine, Steve, I know your passion, I know your heart is in getting this building resolved and getting the issues taken care of. We're just looking for some help. I mean, we got to get some movement on this stuff because it's been sitting around and sitting on our plate, and it keeps coming back, and we've got to get it done. Because
And I'll
at some
provide
point-
Steve with the
At some point, we're
spreadsheet.
going to make a resolution
Right.
to shut it down. I mean, it's not fair to the residents. I mean, this has been on our plate since
Fenton, I
February,
think you
March.
need to also be very careful. We've talked several times about the fact that we have code issues.
Which,
But
correct.
there are not safety issues.
Yeah, but if it was
That
owned
was
by a
not-
private institution and they had code issues, how long would the township let this continue
Oh,
to go on?
You're preaching to the chorus, trust me.
Correct. We
But-
know that. We're just
But aren't
asking
you,
for help.
you're the board of commissioners. You can
Right.
make the decisions on what needs to be done. I mean, if we're going to fund it, and there's not enough money to fund it to finish the codes or
Oh.
satisfy the codes,
We're
then
gonna take
where
care
are
of
we?
that, yes. But again, I'll provide Steve with I took the list, I think I sent it to you guys too, the spreadsheet, which is
yeah,
the
we
list
got
of
that.
all the
We've
items.
got that.
Short, medium, long term. And I'll share that with Steve too, so
I
he
think-
has something to work from.
All we're asking is from help
Absolutely.
with our liaisons from the Board of Commissioners.
Do you
to
think
try and get
Steve will
this
have
resolved.
answers for us the next meeting?
Yeah. Steve will have answers for you the next
If I
meeting.
can interject just for a moment, I'm a little bit confused. You mentioned, and by the way, you two guys have been the biggest supporters we've ever had on our Park and Rec board, so thank you, but I'm confused here.
And let me just, and attending just about every meeting, and thank you.
Absolutely. Under new business, I'm going to jump ahead just a little bit. C, we have park and facility maintenance project priority list development, which I assume is the spending of that $400,000.
No.
We're talking about it.
No, it's different.
Okay, if not, it looks like you guys already made decisions on how to use that $400,000 park and rec money. this year. Without any input?
That's for facility improvements and repairs.
These are all things that you folks have weighed in on. There's nothing
From the
new that you
inspections that were
haven't
done
seen
at the
prior,
I
Tom.
understand that,
Yeah.
but have we been asked for priority list?
And we need that to develop our long-range plans, our
It's
spending.
long-term, but
These
for
are-
right now, it's $400,000.
That's what that discussion item is, and I was gonna expand on that when you got to that, as far as, 5-year capital plan, 10-year capital
Yep.
plan. That's really what that's dealing with, enterprise-wide on a park
The
basis.
$400,000 is to fix the facilities that, from the current violation reports that we've seen for Sulpizio, the Willows, and Kreuzberg. That's
Well,
my understanding.
I'm not sure I agree with that.
Okay.
I don't remember duct cleaning being on the June report that
Duct
we
cleaning's
received
not
from-
coming out of that money.
Excuse me, I don't remember duct cleaning being on that report that we received in June, when the gentleman told us that if this was any other facility, it would be closed. So I think there are safety issues. I think that's the way it was represented to us. And we need to hold the commissioner's foot to the fire that if the township produces a document that says this building is not at adequate status, then it's our responsibility to be the voice of the community saying, let's raise our hand and say this is a problem. And I agree with Fenton's message. I appreciate your two support. But quite frankly, I think the progress is slow and not sufficient.
Well, I mean, in the end, it's a question of money, okay? It's what it all boils down to.
No, it's not a question of money. It's a question of safety. If
Well-
my kid is in there playing and there's a problem and there's a exit sign that doesn't work or there's a fire extinguisher that doesn't work, then that's a liability issue, that's a legal issue, and those things were detailed in that report. That's what I think is the important question.
But they already said that
Yeah,
all
I
the
don't
things
think-
related to safety are taken care of. That's not the issue.
I don't think there's ever been a
They have not
finding
been
that it's
taken care of.
unsafe.
Things related to safety. And I disagree with John's comment there.
It's not my understanding that it's an unsafe environment right now. I mean, there are code violations, yes. I would like to think that we wouldn't be having programs there if there was a safety hazard. I did not get that impression from reading that report. I think there are a lot of long-term issues in that building that we need to address that are going to cost a lot of money. And that is the conversation that we need to have with the prioritization. In the short term, the very short term, we have this, call it emergency funding, this $400,000 for those few facilities that need some Band-Aid work while we figure out this long-term solution and our long-term capital plan. But the fact of the matter is, the money's not there right now, so in this long-term plan, we're trying to figure out what the needs are, so then we can figure out how we're gonna fund it.
But we're still utilizing that facility. And to your
Right.
point, if another entity had a building that had violations of the township code, would that building still be open? And my argument, my position would be probably not.
I agree with that.
Probably
and-
not.
And if we're violating codes, why are the codes put in place in the first place? I mean, I think the codes are there probably for safety issues, would be the
Well, right.
concern. So I think it all does come back to a safety issue or, I agree with Mike. It's, if we're violating codes, we shouldn't be open, I guess, if we're still there 180 days later and we haven't done anything with it. But if a private business said, well, I
guess the
just don't have the
bottom line
money, we
is-
wouldn't be able to say, well, okay, well, when you get the money, fix it.
The bottom line is that we keep on pushing off a decision here.
Right.
And we keep on throwing money into that facility that many people feel that may not be around much longer. And meanwhile, we're putting money into that facility. If we're gonna do it, let's do it right and keep that facility going. If we're gonna do it halfway, then let's stop and put money into Fenimore Restroom, which is just atrocious. Let's put money else in some other areas that we really, really need.
That's the feedback we want from you.
That's feedback we've been given for years, John.
I can't speak for prior years.
I guess a question I have, I'm referencing the June 6th memo, okay, to the Parks and Rec Board, and it was signed off by Robert Stevens. Is that the one where, that's the baseline, that listing? I guess it talks about $466,000, $500,000. But in answer to questions up there, and I appreciate where the Board of Commissioners are coming from. You have a limited pot of money. That seems to be the state of the world. But $76,000 for a motorized folding partition does not rise to the level of a health and safety issue to me, okay? I guess what we have to do is look at this list of some 8 or 9 pages and look and check off those items that
I
are.
would argue that that's been done.
That's the way I developed the spreadsheet.
I would argue that
The spreadsheet that I
Okay.
offered you folks, that's the way I developed
Yes,
that
the
spreadsheet.
And how much does the bottom line come to address all of those issues that are code violations? It's not $400,000.
No.
It's probably $50,000-$60,000.
Yeah, I think that's what we
roughly.
came up with.
That rings a bell.
you know,
But
there's
that
another-
was a
another
comprehensive
piece of
assessment, just
information.
for the record.
But the other part of it is that, you know, we've been trying to reach out to the community, try and have folks, you know, help out and assist with that. That's all well and good, but it's not getting done. And that's the frustration that I think this board has here, is this assessment was done in December, roughly. It was presented to this board in February. There was apparently issues with that report that, had it been anybody else, the facility would have been shut down in 30 days if they weren't corrected. And our frustration is that from that time, nothing's been done. And it just seems to be going month after month after month, and you know, I'm not sure where we go from here.
What's the age of the facility? Does anybody know when Sulpicio was built?
Long time ago, I want to
75
say
years, I don't know.
50s. I'm sorry, I don't know that date, but
Not long ago, not long enough to abandon it. And as you said, Fenton, 50 to 60K
Roughly.
to satisfy the violation. That doesn't sound like a whole lot in the scheme of things. And
That's
if we are
assuming that
trying to get people in the community to help out, I haven't seen anything in the paper or on
I know Bob
the
Nicholas has been
TV
working with,
about that, and that would be great, just to put out some kind of message for
Bob Nicholas has been
volunteers.
working diligently with
Well-
local representatives and
But-
local trade folks.
But that dialogue has been on for months.
Yes,
It might be
correct.
on for 6 months.
I haven't even
The-
seen anything about it in the public.
When you have a
We've talked about it
facility
here.
and there are kids playing in it and it's being used a lot, it should be managed and it should be worked on by professionals. And I think 50 or 60K was the number we talked about several months ago. So perhaps Steve can look at that report and come back to us and say, of these things identified in the year-old report almost, these items are being dealt with, and hopefully they resolve most of the code and safety violations. If they don't, then I think we're back to square one, and we go to the commissioners and say, in our estimation, based on what professionals have told us, this is not a safe facility and it should be closed.
Well, why don't we have a campaign to save Sulpicio? You know, you put a big sign outside and you set your target,
I
and
think
you
campaigns,
ask
I think
for
you need something immediate
donations.
right now. John, did you say that the board has come up with $400,000 of finances to address these issues
Go ahead.
in this current?
That's not just for Sulpicio.
I
That
know
is-
it's not just for
yes,
Sulpicio, but
we've
it's
we
for,
authorized last meeting or 2 meetings ago to spend $400,000 of our capital money, our set-aside money, on some of our facilities that are in dire need. The only specific expense that we have approved is the $90,000 for the Kreuzberg Center's fire extinguisher
Sprinkler
system.
system, right.
Nothing else specific has been approved, but some of that money is
Will go.
earmarked for some of these priority items at Sulpicio.
Steve, can we ask you to please take a look at the report and the items that I believe have been earmarked as being immediate need for attention, and can we please report back next meeting so that we can try and bring resolution to the issues and that's been ongoing for close to a year?
I'll gladly take a look at the commissioner's spreadsheet and the priority list
Thank
of
you.
work.
Well, I think the next step is also in that next meeting, we need to make a motion that we want, if he determines $50,000 is needed, we need to make a motion that it goes to the Board of Commissioners, we need 50,000. If it's not going to be approved, then we'll make another motion or a recommendation to shut it down.
Okay,
You agree with that?
I do,
Okay.
I do.
Thanks.
Again, I think it's a sense of urgency to try and bring this to a closure. Okay.
One last item, just to.
Yep.
I want to make sure everybody understands. Tammy has taken steps to address the problems insofar as a lot of problems were on the second floor. So there are areas that we're not utilizing.
Yeah.
And so we've done those things. And I'll be glad to go over with any of you that list in detail and show you how I came up with the prioritization that I came up with.
Okay. All right, thank you, John. Mr. Sampson is here to talk about the Radnor Boys Lacrosse Youth Program.
Talk about preaching to the choir. I see a number of parents of Radnor Youth Lacrosse players. If I have to explain the program to you now.
There's a population at home that is on, that you're on TV.
Well, I'm pleased to talk about the program. I guess, Fenton, you're closest to my eyesight. If I'm going in too much detail, just give me a move along sign. Historically, the program was started in 1992 by Ridge McLaren, Chuck Lynham, and me. Basically, it was run for up until 5 years ago by Jack Brennan and I. I got blamed for everything, but whenever there was an issue, I called Jack Brennan and we decided what to do. About 5 years ago, we started being managed by a management council. We try to rotate the participation to try to get parents of younger boys and keep parents who know a lot about the game and have been involved or coaches. We are a U.S. Lacrosse organization, which means that we are a member of the U.S. Lacrosse, which is the national governing body for the state. That through the reason I decided to switch that or make us a U.S. Lacrosse body is that there's $1 million of health coverage for anybody who's injured if you have 100% U.S. Lacrosse membership in your program. And being aware of a couple of catastrophic injuries that happen on the field and knowing the difference between the insurance afforded by our U.S. Lacrosse membership, we did that. So we're happy, we're not happy, but we're relieved that if anyone in our program suffers a really serious injury, that the cost, getting adequate health coverage will not be an issue. We are a combination house and travel program, and we also administer the middle school, run the middle school program. It is not run by the middle school, though they're certainly cooperative with our efforts, but it is administered by us. We hire the coaches. They are our only paid coaches. Program runs from 1st grade through 8th grade. And our house program is divided into 2 levels, 1st and 2nd graders, of which there were 95 last year, 3rd and 4th graders, of which there were 91. We are in the travel arena. We're a member of the Southeastern Pennsylvania Youth Lacrosse Association. We have several travel teams at different levels. We have one 4th grade travel team, which we pull the 4th graders from the house league and allow them, we hope, our goal is that every one of the 4th graders in the house program gets a chance to play 2 or 3 outside games as well as their in-house program. Then we have travel teams at the 5th and 6th grade level and the 7th and 8th grade level. At the 5th and 6th grade last year, we had 75 boys. At the 7th and 8th grade, we had 74 boys. Total membership was 335. We've been above 300 for a couple of years. We were above 300 several years ago, dipped down. into about 270s, 280s, and then we've come up again. The school program, which it's basically an 8th grade team and a 7th grade team. We usually have former Radnor Youth Lacrosse players coach the team, kids who are either in college or through college. There are 45 boys who participated in that program last year. As I said, they're the only paid coaches. When we started the program, there were 3 people who had played college lacrosse and 1 who had played college club lacrosse. Ridge McLaren, Jack Brennan, and I had played, and John Schobert had played on the Villanova club. Now we are loaded with great experienced coaches. I mean, so much so that our second grade league last year had 3 All-Americans and 1 college Division I coach coaching their children. So we had a pretty good coaching staff at the lowest level, and we do that. We have a residency requirement. You have to be a Radnor resident to play. We have less than 5 exceptions. The exceptions not only have to be approved by me, and historically I would go to the Park and Rec director, but the exceptions that we had last year had already been exceptions from years ago that did not need to be cleared, but our league is very strict, so that in fact I was instructed a few years ago that any St. Catharines student who lived outside the township should be treated as an in-township resident for our program, but our league won't allow them to play for us. So even though they go to St. Catharines, they have to play for the township in which they live if that township has a program. So we would have more non-Radnor residents playing who went to St. Catharines if the league would allow. In terms of resources, our major resources are the turf fields at the high school. On the times we share them, we work out our use of them with the high school, with the Department of Parks and Rec, with the girls program, and it works out generally, and Ditmar Fields. From time to time, we've used Radnor Memorial Park, and we also use Creek and Loop for our youngest boys' in-house program. We try to make it known in everything we print or put on the internet, and we do have a website if you want to check it out. It's www.radnoryouth.lacrosse. We try to make it known that money should never be an issue with a boy who wants to play lacrosse. We have boys that don't pay anything to play lacrosse. We have some that just pay the cost of the U.S. Lacrosse membership, that they have to join U.S. Lacrosse, and then once they show that to us, they register for nothing. We have a good supply of used equipment, and we're constantly adding to it. We also adopted with the girls program a scholarship for people that can't afford it to go to camps in the summer. It's the Gary Martin Scholarship in honor of Gary, who I'm sure most of you know, who's been a great coach and leader in our program and the girls program for years. We also have had, we haven't had it the last couple of years, unfortunately, because I couldn't get anyone to take it over, but we ran a program, a tournament for our youngest boys that included the Lower Merion program, the Conestoga program, and one Wilmington program and Rose Tree, where we mixed the boys up and they played a tournament to raise money for cancer research, because we lost 2 coaches that are near and dear to us to forms of cancer, and Lower Merion lost its founder to cancer. So we've tried to teach the boys, some public service. Our preference in when we go to tournaments is to try to go to tournaments that are fundraisers for causes. Our challenges are, one challenge is resources, fields. Many of you know I was an advocate for the lease on Radnor Memorial Park because Ditmar has been, I don't want to get in trouble with Tammy and use the word overused, but we've had to delay our start getting on Ditmar in a number of years because after it's used in the fall, it can't be used into, you know, one year was April 1st. Sometimes we get on it in March, but it's been a problem. You know, we really would love to have that field in better shape, which obviously we hope that we can, you know, see the township carry through the lease with Agnes Irwin. It would be great. We have a great relationship with the high school, but we are always at risk of getting a call on a Friday night when we have, you know, plans for everyone in our program to be using the turf the next day. We have to have a practice tomorrow, you're off the turf, and that's happened. I've been in New York on business and gotten a call saying, you know, with the weather planned tomorrow, we're not getting to practice, or the weather today, we're not getting practice, we need the turf tomorrow, and I've got to basically tell 100, you know, 80 kids, or two groups of 80 kids that we're off the turf. So obviously, we would love to have more fields. We'd also love to have the middle school take over the middle school program. When we started the middle school program, we were one of the first middle schools to have a team, and it wasn't limited to Radnor Middle School students. If a boy attended a school that did not have middle school lacrosse, he could play on that team. Now, all the surrounding schools have teams, and the only school that doesn't is Radnor Middle School. So TE didn't have any teams. The Catholic schools didn't have any teams. They now all have teams. I think it's probably done by Mr. Glynn. He probably is funding it, but I don't know. But they all have teams. They all seem to be headed to St. Joe's Prep. I don't know why. But you know, we're still running that. Another challenge is so many of our boys play on club teams after our season, and they need fields, and whether they can use Radnor fields is always an issue. So I hope I covered all the bases, but I'm certainly willing to answer any questions. I didn't see you waving me to move on, but
no. Thank you very much. Anybody have any questions for Peter?
It's a great program.
It is a great program. Peter, at some point, taking Ditmar as an example, utilization is not going to decline. Do we have the choice between having the quality of the fields deteriorate or having to turf those fields in order to provide the amount of time the kids need to be on them?
I think people probably think I'm a turf fanatic, but I would really hate to get to the point where we were turfing an area like Ditmar. I really believe that if Radnor Memorial Park, if that lease goes through, that will enable us to stay off in the years that we should stay off Ditmar. Enable Ditmar A, it usually is, it gets overused, to enable the park and you know the crew from the township to get the field back in shape. And by the way, Paul Totaro does a great job. I mean, I don't, and this department does a great job. So I don't want anyone listening at home or here to think that the township and the crew that Paul runs is not doing their job. I mean, I've walked the field with Paul. You know, I've discussed getting it back in shape, whatever. I do think, and I suggested this last year when this happened, is that the programs have a responsibility to look at a field at least no later than halfway into their season and see, are they causing more use, are they causing more wear than the field can take? And we need to step up and look at the field and say, this is getting beat up.
Self-police.
And we need to move more to turf, move more, I tell people the turf is available for practices, but there may be times where I'm saying, no, it's not a question of what you prefer. You have to practice on turf for the next couple of weeks. We've got to let the seed on Ditmar work. We've got to do these things. I think, we have a good relationship with the soccer club, but I think, it's about October 15th. It's about halfway through the soccer season. They should be looking at Ditmar and forming a judgment. Is it too beat up right now? The other fields, they can be worn because, baseball doesn't wear down a field the same way soccer and lacrosse do. And so those are the baseball fields. But these are just rectangular fields. Those are the only lacrosse fields we have. So we don't have the luxury of going to Cohen or somewhere else when Ditmar's needs to be shut down. We have to go to turf or Radnor Memorial Park. So anyway, I don't know if that's a complete answer or even an answer to your question.
Thank you.
Yep.
I do have a question, Peter. At the high school on the turf fields, is the program getting enough usage over there?
Yeah, we have a great relationship there, and it's worked out. It's just sometimes it would be nice to not worry that we're going to get bumped, and there's a lot of demand. The high school programs, both the girls and boys, are grown. They're basically talking about fielding 3 teams in each side of the sport this year. So that's one more. The girls have had 3 teams for a couple of years, but I think the boys have had 3 teams and not had 3 teams. But if we're doing a good job on our end, then they've got a bigger demand. They've got more kids who want to play, and our numbers are higher. So there are more new 9th graders who want to play at the high school. So their demand is greater. But we generally work it out. We generally get enough time. There are weekends in March where it is really tough because of so many things going on in March and no grass fields available, and that's the real crunch time.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Well, Peter, thank you for your update, for your report, and thank you for all you're doing for the boys' youth lacrosse, because it certainly is one of the finer programs in the area, and thank you for all your involvement and your dedication. And
well, thank you, all of you, for what you do, and the township staff. So,
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Pete. Thank you, Peter.
okay.
Would this be a good time to get an update on Memorial?
I guess we can do that.
John, Elaine, anything to say?
Well, the last I've heard, they've done their engineering and they're putting their permits together. So we're awaiting their permits. They have not submitted their permits yet.
And we're having discussions about schematic layout of the field and position of scoreboard. So we're eager to get a meeting actually going here soon within the next week with the community sports organization leaders so that we can start talking about that and what that looks like as far as cross-field play as well as full field play and layout of lines on the field. And I know Agnes Irwin is anxious as well to meet with folks so that, it's a field that's functionable for everyone who's going to be over there.
Okay. Steve, is that park facility maintenance project priority list? Is that you or is that Tammy?
Actually, I was going to talk about that tonight. I think you might remember from the last meeting was that under the township's reorganization, some of the duties have shifted. So Tammy's department, which she's director of, is recreation, community programs, and Public Works has taken on the more traditional role of the facilities, the actual facilities, not just the grass, the trees, the parking lot, but actually maintaining and prioritizing the facilities, whether it be the pavilion at Fenimore, or pick one, Comfort Station. So what I've directed our staff to do, we're in the midst now of quantifying what we have at our facilities. So Tammy has given you a list, and it shows you what's in each park. Well, we're going to each park now to determine exactly what's there. How many feet of fence, how many square yards of paving, X, Y, Z, because my job is to come up with a short-term and long-term plan for these parks, and I need to quantify these things so I can attach prices to them. And that being said, although we're charged with that responsibility, Public Works doesn't want to work in a vacuum. Looking at things from an engineering standpoint, I may have one idea of what should be fixed first,
Right.
but I would always bring in the director of the recreation and say, what's your high usage? What do you need to have done? And I would love to have input from the park board accordingly as to what you feel needs to be done. There's some things I'm going to tell you, you need to do this right away, or you might not from one standpoint, but at looking at the different parks, would like to do that as a group. And we have, at the last meeting, our budget calendar for the following year was passed, and one of the items is facilities. And I think we meet in March on that. So what I would ask this board, if you'd be so kind, is to start working backward from that calendar, and if you could start to give me a priority list of the parks you would like to see work done on. We're going to each park now and trying to quantify and determine what we have and what we need to do. And we know we need to do things at many parks, but I would like to get this board's input. That meeting is in March. It's time consuming to do this. I mean, literally, we're measuring how many thousands of feet of fence, how many square yards of paving, and some things I can price immediately. Others I need to bring someone in, like for a roof, to get an idea for the budget of what that costs. So I would ask this board if you could help out. I would love to get your input. Like I said, we don't want to work in a vacuum. I think there's several parties that have to be involved here. Obviously the board and the manager, but Recreation and Park Board. And let us know what you feel the priority parks are, and what you feel the priority work that needs to be done is. And my suggestion would be we meet sooner than later, because it does take a good time, a bit of time to put this together. To get your input, we would meet with Tammy and, perhaps a board member, the manager, and say, where do you want us to go with this? When I put together a 5-year plan and a 10-year plan, or at least the 5-year, and the rest says beyond 5-year. But we need to get that going.
How far along are you, would you say, on, I'm assuming it's a need assessment on each park, basically is what you're doing?
Correct.
How far along are you, and is that something that you could maybe share with us so that we can take a look at that, and then?
Well, at this point, like I say, as we're out quantifying, I don't know if that's as much help to you as your input is to me. If you were to drive to Fenimore and say, hey, Steve, I spent 10 minutes at Fenimore. You need to get a roof. You need to do this. You need to address the bathrooms. Even if you speak to me in generalities, I'll dig in and I'll screw it down to get the price. Or if you went to, pick a park and say, we need new basketball courts. We need new nets. We need, not nets, we need new poles. We need new fencing. Those are the kind of things, like I used with Tammy, I used an example. I said, I may go to a park and say, boy, we need to put a new fence here, and we should probably pave this parking lot and do all this. But if Tammy says to me, Steve, it's a very low-use park,
Right.
then those funds would be better off spent at a high park where she does a lot of programming and many people will enjoy. But I would like to get your input based on, what you see, what you feel is the priority. Is it, park X, Y, or Z that you think is on top on the list, second on the list, third on the list? And then we have to determine, do we request funds, if funds are available, to do an entire park at once?
Right.
And fix everything, or do we do multiple parks over multiple years? I've done both. I mean, the results, obviously are the same in the long run.
To clarify, too, that's May that Township Facilities and Infrastructure will be discussed. So That'll be an actual meeting of the board, so as best prepared that we can be, and even if a board member can accompany us to that meeting to speak to what those items are, would be very helpful.
Okay.
And I would request from this board, if possible, perhaps in, early next year, if you would provide input to me in that regard, because this is something that will take us months to compile.
Okay.
And that would be great if you could help us along those lines.
All right, great, thank you. Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, just, Tammy, you put together a real nice trip. I know John was on that back there in midsummer where we toured
bus tour.
facilities. It was excellent. I assume from your comments during that tour that you had, your department had a priority list of things that you wanted to look at in the coming year or 2 years. Could you share that with us at the next meeting so that I could become, a little more conversant with it? I went up to Salpizio Gym after getting on the board here, try and get a firsthand, and it would help me also. I drive by Cowan Park each day, but some of the other parks are not in my immediate area, and I would like to see your feeling in your department so I may become more informed in those. So is that something you could share with us at the next meeting?
Well, as Steve had mentioned, they've kind of taken it now and they've ran with it. So I tried to do sort of an assessment based on what my predecessor had already put together, along with many of you, and I tried to go out and then put my own spin on that, just to examine how things have maybe changed over, the last couple years. So now with Steve and his staff looking at that even more closely, that list has become probably that much more comprehensive. So I think we can work to try and put the more comprehensive version of what we have together for you, so you can have that next month.
And it doesn't have to be, our Public Works facility is right in the center of Wayne. I hope most of you, I'll make sure you have my cards. I mean, it would be as simple as, Steve, are you free Thursday at 10 and stop by our facility and we can just meet in the conference room and hash things out. The main thing is I'm trying to attach costs to these because that will help you determine when you see what a total cost is. That may also change your prioritization in looking at the funding situation. You might say, we really love to do something in this park, but this park is more attainable because it's cost less.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Steve. Sponsorship policy, Tammy, you want to touch on that?
Our meetings keep getting longer, don't they? Tonight I wanted to talk about the sponsorship policy, which you all have received in advance of tonight's meeting. It's something that I had been working on for the last several months, and sponsorships, of course, are not something that's exactly foreign to our department. We started using sponsorships back in 2003, I think, more formally for the Radnor Summer Concert Series, where we had what is now TD Bank, Commerce Bank at the time, had made a contribution to us where we worked very closely with them. So this is something we want to explore even more fully. It's something that is a big trend right now happening around us nearby with a lot of local recreation departments and happening nationwide as well. So we want to continue to try and work very closely with our local businesses. And of course, this is not just directed at businesses, but organizations, people, those that want to work with us in this type of a situation. So basically, the policy is broken down into a number of different sections. So just a little bit about the background. We want to provide a framework and an understanding for how the township's policies will be administered. Essentially, this will help support program areas, event areas, project areas. It'll increase our ability to provide additional services, new services, things that would go beyond the ability to provide out of the general fund. It would give us an opportunity to deliver programming and events to a broader base of the community as well. So we're thinking of things more like bigger community events, not just small programs for niche groups, but things like Township Community Days, taking items like our egg hunt that we had and being able to deliver those to a lot more people. So this is also something we look at in terms of being a benefit to our businesses, folks in the community, it's something that helps all of Radnor grow and prosper and increases visibility for everybody. So we look at it as a way to enhance our partnerships as well, and also improve on the businesses here in town and locally around us in the region. Basic objectives of the policy, and these are all spelled out in there, so you have a lot of detail in front of you. But we're looking to administer it so that it's a consistent and fair approach, and it's organized so that we can safeguard the township's value, its image, its assets, and all of its interests, of course, while working towards success. We want to get the best value, of course, so we want to be able to organize it in a sense that, we're able to make a good assessment. We want to increase the opportunities for financial support, as I mentioned before, for both new and existing programs and events. We want to protect the allegations of anything inappropriate that would be dealt with throughout the course of dealing with sponsorships and the relationships with sponsors. And of course, just overall organization, administration of the process, so that we can convey an understanding to those who are going to sponsor an event, what the parameters are, and the way the township is following those. So the way we looked at these forms of sponsorships would be, it would be cash, or it would be an in-kind good that's provided for an event or a service. And basically, this is different from a donation, because the difference is basically is that if somebody's going to make a donation to us, we don't have the obligation in that sense to give them any type of a benefit as a result of it. So with sponsorship, there's an expectation that the business, the individual, or the group is going to get something as a result of it. And generally that is in the form of an advertisement, which we would deem, according to the outline of terms, as a sponsorship advertisement. So it's basically temporary marketing benefits. It's not something that would be long-term. So it would be outlined per the term of the sponsorship, and it would last for a temporary amount of time. So for example, if an event was going to happen, let's say in mid-November at this point, we would be advertising for a certain season. Those benefits would be given to that particular sponsor throughout that time frame, and that would be identified in a sponsorship agreement that we develop in our department, or if it's another department within the township, they actually put that together, and it's something that's reviewed by both parties as well as the township solicitor. There's a section in there on naming rights, of course. Naming rights, of course, are a little bit different because we're talking about an actual name of a venue or an asset, something that's located in a park, and it would be for a fixed amount of time. That's something that would, in all circumstances, as we're looking to do that, would be discussed well in advance. It would be something that we would have significant input from all of our boards about, and the way the policy is written, it would be through a competitive bidding process if we look to do that. I see that something being more in the future, of course. So sample areas of sponsorships are not just within Parks and Recreation's realm. We're currently looking at this from the Radnor Television perspective as well. So there would be underwriting possibilities for the electronic bulletin, for slides, and also for items that may show during the TV programs that take place. And then, of course, the website and the video on demand components that we have, those would offer opportunities as well. And then any additional projects that we see that might lend opportunity. So basically, all of these will have their own set of guidelines. So if we have a specific event as a department that we're looking for specific amounts of money or specific contribution, all of that will be spelled out in an actual packet relative to that specific program or project, and that will be shared with the potential sponsors. They will also get a copy of the policy so they understand how it's administered, and then there's also an application form and process that goes along with that. So some of the guidelines, basically, the township, we basically retain the discretion of who we're going to work with, who we would want to basically have their name on an event or on a project, which we would want to preserve and enhance the township in every way possible, and in no way diminish, our authority or our mission. And if for some reason there's something that may be questionable in that realm, it would be brought before the boards for an approval. And that would be basically up to the administration's decision-making process to determine when that should happen. The basic process is, it really unfolds in two ways. We can initiate the need for sponsorships formally or informally through a request for a sponsor process, which, as I mentioned, would be self-initiated by us. Or on the flip side, the sponsor would be coming to us because they either have a specific event that they're aware of that they want to contribute towards, or they have an idea of something that they want to do and they want to share with us. So it really has a whole lot of room for growth and ideas and creativity. And then we would sit down, have a discussion, review and complete necessary forms, and then identify the specific details and actually attach a value, whether it's a cash value or even if it's in-kind or services, to what that particular sponsorship contribution would entail. So then at that point, we would put that together into a sponsorship agreement, which is something that both parties would sign off on. And we have actually been kind of stepping through these very lightly recently, with word kind of getting out that, you know, we're trying to do more events and we have more opportunities. Folks are coming to us, businesses are coming to us, and they've been doing a lot with us. The concert series this summer was a perfect example. We had a group step up and help us out with the ice cream that we provide and that we've provided in the past. So a lot of people have really shown and embraced interest in this particular program with the township, and they see the mutual benefit that it has. So basically, levels and benefits are going to develop as our programming and our event roadmap develops. So over time, as we assess a plan of what we want to try and offer and how we want to grow beyond the current structure of the events that we have, that's going to help us establish specific guidelines and what levels and benefits will entail. So basically, for instance, you know, if we have a situation where we have an event that maybe only costs us a couple $100s to run, the levels and benefits that that sponsor might receive would be different than somebody who's maybe putting up an entire amount that may fund a concert series. So we're right now in the process of taking a look at that plan to determine how those levels and benefits will actually be molded together and reflective of you know, what our course is going to be over the next few years. So some of the sample recognition areas, of course, is, you know, getting logos and names on brochures and printed materials, on T-shirts, recognition on the website, booth space at programs so that they can give out goodie bags or brochures and things about their company, and signage. And of course, you know, we're open to creativity and you know, anything that can be negotiated, of course, within a particular opportunity. Basically, each department who will be working through the sponsorship opportunities at this point in time will have a designee. Right now, I'm that person for the Recreation Department, and Jim Doling is that person for the Telecommunications Department and Web Department for the Township, so he will be administering those for RTV opportunities. As that grows, of course, further people will be identified. So we'll be in charge of negotiating those agreements, administering those agreements, and now that I have a program coordinator, it's something I'll be working with that person as well as this program begins to unfold. And of course, if there's ever questions about anything as far as who we would work with, we would be consulting with the township manager as well as the solicitor, and then of course ultimately the boards if necessary. So basically, the sponsorship agreement, sometimes we've worked with companies that they have their own sponsorship agreement, so in that case that takes away the need for us to prepare one. So as long as we have all of the guidelines outlined from their perspective, there's some companies, like for instance TD Bank, who has been a great sponsor for us for Holiday at the Willows and the concert series, they have their own process and their own basic contract that they put together. In that situation, that would basically negate the need for us to prepare any type of an agreement on our end. But obviously, you know, in the circumstances where a business doesn't necessarily have, you know, this type of a plan as part of its business, it's something that we would step in and we would do and put that together. So we have some paper trail and record-keeping ability that goes along with it. So basically, in a nutshell, I don't want to take up too much time, but that kind of summarizes the program. So I just want to offer an opportunity for you guys to ask questions. Hopefully you've had a chance to read through it a little bit. It offers a more formal approach to kind of what we have been doing a little bit. It makes it a little bit more broad.
I just want to commend you on being proactive in this area. Tonight, I went through it once or twice quickly, review it together. It's a good first step, and putting it together is probably beyond that, very close to it.
Yeah, and it has been reviewed by the township solicitor, just so you guys are aware. John Rice has reviewed it. So at this point, after getting some input from the board to see if we have to go back and make any revisions, after we assemble that, we would certainly bring it before the Board of Commissioners and get their input before we go full force with this.
I was just going to say, having this in place and then making awareness of it, and obviously going out and being proactive and trying to solicit sponsorships and advertisement and so forth. I think it's great, and certainly a revenue stream for your department and certainly for the township.
I emailed it around. Did you got it?
Yeah, we got it.
I can re-email it to the board. And
on the
then
email.
as a side note, also with the goals and objectives, I
Tuesday,
looked
I
through the
think.
packet
I
over
think
there. I
you're
noticed
now
you guys
Tuesday,
didn't
right?
have those.
Tuesday was the,
The
Tuesday.
announcement of the meeting
Yeah.
is
Okay.
attached on this.
Again, excellent. Nice job.
All right, thank you. And and I will make sure that you guys get another copy of that and the goals and objectives, because I noticed that those weren't in your packets, and I'll email those around. If you want to make some comments and email those back to me, that'd be great. Thanks.
Thank you, Tammy.
Tuesday, October 11th at 9:18, you sent it out. PM. Working late.
Usually after I put my son to bed, that's
No,
I'm
just
right
saying.
I'm right back
It's
at it.
Thank you.
Are we doing anything on the Eagle Scout presentation update, or?
I believe Dan was to attend tonight.
Okay.
There must have been a miscommunication, so
No problem.
we'll
Okay,
follow
we
up
can
with him.
Put that on our next month's agenda?
Yes.
Okay,
Just ask the park board, if you go to Sawmill Park, take a look at the bridge. It's really nice,
super,
what they did, and unbelievably quick.
great. All right, thank you, Steve. Do we have any public participation?
Am I supposed to just talk about the signage or the other?
You could talk about both.
I'm Sarah Pilling. I live in Garrett Hill. I live on Garrett Avenue, and I often sort of serve the role as the watchdog for Emlyn Tinnell Park when the kids vandalize or something's been left out. I came to see you early spring to talk about the dog signage, which is very inconsistent. Big letters, it says no dogs, $1,000 fine. Small letters, it says, except under the following exceptions. And it just doesn't work. Your sports teams, the families bring their dogs. They're a little skittish about it. The dogs are well behaved. I'm absolutely convinced that there's a two-way interaction between the dogs socializing the little kids and the little kids socializing the dogs. So once again, I ask you and Steve
Yes.
to see if we can't come up with something that makes this signage more consistent. And I heard you say you wanted to look at it in all the parks. The truth of it is, dogs are no longer animals that are kept in cages. They're members of families. They sleep in beds. They go on vacation. Hotels, motels, restaurants now allow dogs under certain circumstances. So I'd really like you to look at the policy of dogs in the park as long as we keep them under control.
I think with some of the restructuring and so forth within the Parks and Rec Department, and with Steve coming on board, I think that is on our agenda to visit with him and try and address that issue, so it's consistent throughout.
Okay. Now, the other issue is, I received a phone call about 10 days ago from Tammy to provide some input on them writing our legislators about funding for a comfort station for Emlyn Tennell. We have been waiting patiently and impatiently for about 7 years. You could ask Commissioner Schaefer how many drinks she has before she comes to watch her daughter play baseball, and she'll tell you none, because there's no place to go to the bathroom. And it really is a health and welfare issue. That means these kids are not drinking as much water as they should. It means the parents are not drinking as much water as they should because there's no way to relieve themselves. The sports teams, the baseball teams rents a porta potty, which is an attractive nuisance. And some people wouldn't go in it if their life depended on it. And I don't know how many of you have driven past Emlyn Tennell when your teams aren't playing to see how much this park is used. Particularly this summer when it was so damn hot in July. Almost every night you would see multiple blankets out on the field with people having picnics. What I learned in 2010 while doing the census is that Chet Wynn Radnor House provides no air conditioning in the halls. So if the people can't afford to pay for the air conditioning, there is none. Believe me, I almost roasted to death walking the halls to try and find the people to do the census. So it is very highly used. Kids are out there practicing all the time. The neighbors use it. And something's come up that a comfort station would almost be a public service. I meet a lot of people in the morning who work at the Rosemont Retirement Community who walk from the R5. And there is no bathroom facility. By the time they leave town, till they get to the Rosemont Presbyterian Village, there is nowhere to go. And let me just say there's anecdotal evidence that the park is being used as a bathroom by humans. So for a whole lot of reasons, I'd like you to at least support Tammy, to have the sports team support the township in seeing if we can't get another DCNR grant for Emlyn Tennell. It's used much more than your sports teams. It is our neighborhood space. It is our open space, admittedly. There are seniors walking the track, which means they're protecting their health. I've seen quite a group of overweight ladies who are now walking the track or running the track, trying to regain their health. I think that it's more than just your baseball field or your soccer field. It's a real community asset, and we need a comfort station.
I think, to Steve's comments regarding the assessment of each of the parks, and I think if you would go back to the capital budget for the Parks and Rec and look at the projects that were on the to-do list and seeing those projects being pushed back year after year after
Our
year.
comfort station's
Emlyn
been
Tennell is one.
way back for a long time.
Anke's another.
Yeah.
The Willows is, so we hear you loud and clear, and if there was a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, they'd all get done, but certainly we hear you.
Well, I think it's a health and welfare issue
Absolutely.
with the kids playing baseball and then
Yep.
playing soccer. And now the kids are playing soccer, there is no porta potty. So there is nothing there
Yep.
for those kids to relieve themselves. And that's really not a healthy issue. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, Sarah.
Tammy, whose responsibility is it to put porta potties there? Is it the teams that are using it during the season, or is it the township?
It's the township, but I believe, don't quote me on this, but I think the organization is paying for it. I don't think that the township is actually being billed for that one.
Okay,
But we organize and coordinate with them
right,
to drop it each year.
okay. And I agree, that's only a short-term, situation. We need that comfort station there long-term. Yeah, absolutely.
Same with the trail.
And how soon will the dog issue be resolved? We allow dogs on the trail, so it seems that dogs should be allowed on other parts of our parks as well. And just want to know where that stands.
Well, I think we have to, compile exactly what our signage is too, because I think we're still trying to understand that and get an inventory. And then I think we need to, make a decision then, how we want to approach basically, that is in terms of parks. I mean, I know that we had some dialogue about it before. We talked about, should parks that have walking paths be the parks where, we say that we can have dogs in them, as long as they're not, on the athletic fields or on the ball fields doing any type of damage. So maybe that's one consideration.
I mean, signage is relatively inexpensive in the grand scheme of things. It's just a matter of making sure we meet the park board's needs. And if there's an ordinance concerning that, making sure that we're consistent with the ordinance. And then, the fact of ordering the signs and installing the signs, that's not a big issue.
Well, that's good, but all dogs should be on leashes other than at Hartford Park, the dog park, I would think. And all owners under the ordinance as well need to clean up after their dogs. So there are not that many parks in our township that it seems to me it wouldn't be difficult to find out what the inventory is. In short order, going around seeing. I know Odoricio says that you can't have dogs. Ditmar can't have dogs. The Willows, all places where people would really like to have dogs. So thanks for. I'd like to actually find out a time frame when we would be getting this information, because Sarah did ask it at least, 8 months ago, if not more.
This list here indicates what parks are allowed to have dogs.
I know, but not all parks should. So my question is, not all parks can have dogs. So I just want to know when the discussion is going to be had here about this, and when a decision is going to be made.
I agree with you somewhat. I think the beginning point to understand it is, what is the ordinance in the township with reference to dogs? Are all dogs to be leashed? Okay.
We know that.
And
That's
if
a
we know
given.
that, then I guess we have to, question I have is, are you going to allow dogs in parks, in one park, not the other park? Consistency is very important, and I understand that you mentioned before, it's not being consistent across all the parks. And then the other thing is, once you put it in there and put signs, then the enforcement has to follow it, okay? And that's very critical. So you have to buy in by other departments about the enforcement. You can put all the signs in the world up, but if you're not going to be consistent in enforcing, it's meaningless. So I think that's a beginning point too. So you have to get that all together, so you're not arbitrary or capricious as to why you're having dogs allowed over here but not over there. So I think that discussion has to take place.
Well, right. And my question is, when is it going to be taking place? I just kick the can now, and I think the sooner the better.
Well, maybe before we take a look at the global look at it, maybe we could focus on Emlyn Tunnel as well, because I think it just has its own internal inconsistency with the way it's posted, which is why Sarah had approached us in the first place.
Nothing's been done about it, so what my suggestion is that we do something about it sooner than later.
It's both a witness to a crime over a dog and the victim of a crime over a dog at Emlyn Tunnel. And I was walking my puppy, and this guy came along, and the sign says, "No dogs in the park, $1,000 fine." And he started to give me grief, and I thought he had pulled a gun out of his briefcase. It turned out to be a camera, but I nearly had a heart attack. And about 3 weeks later, the same guy and another gal and I were walking our dog, and first he used a racial epithet, and then he tried to spray the dog with pepper spray, but she cut between them to protect the dog, and she was sprayed in the face. And he went to prison for 2 years. But I don't walk at Emlyn Tunnel without a cell phone, because you just don't know who's going to interpret that sign, what it literally says, which is "No dogs in the park, $1,000 fine." So it's a safety issue for the people who are walking too. Yeah. It got me out of a court serving on jury once. John Osborne's wife was the judge, and she said, "Have you ever been a witness of crime?" And I go, "Yes." And she said, "Where's that?" And I go, "Radnor Township." And her eyes get as big as saucers. She says, "It says here you were the victim of a crime." I go, "Yep." "Where?" "Radnor Township." She said, "I think I'll let you go."
All right, well, we're going to let Steve kind of do his inventory and give a report back, and then we will take it from there.
So that'll be next Park and Rec meeting?
Yep.
Okay, great, thanks.
I mean, like I say, it's really not an issue. We'll see what signs are there. We'll come back and tell you what each sign says, and let me know what the sign needs to say, and we'll make it consistent throughout.
Good, and note on the trail that dogs are allowed and that there are bags for dog litter along the trail, which might be a consideration at other parks as well.
Okay, anybody have any last comments or thoughts? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
We're adjourned.